It was a bright summer morning in Toronto. 8-year-old Nicole finished her breakfast and said goodbye to her mom and headed downstairs to meet a friend in the lobby. They were going to the pool. But Nicole never met her friend. No one saw her leave, no signs of a struggle, no clues left behind. Just a child who walked out the door and was never seen again. How does a little girl disappear from a high-rise apartment building in broad daylight with no trace? This is the haunting mystery of Nicole Morin, a case that still echoes through the halls of time and through the hearts of those who remember her. Nicole Morin was born April 1st, 1977 in Toronto, Ontario. She was the only child of Arthur and Jeanette, who had been married for 12 years before she was born. Nicole is described as a typical 8-year-old girl. She was cheerful, enjoyed going to fairs, the circus, and McDonald's. She was also cautious around strangers. Nicole lived with her mom in a penthouse apartment on the 20th floor in Etobicoke. Nicole was good friends with Melissa Alischuk, who lived in the same building. They spent a lot of time together, using their imaginations, playing outside, and swimming in the building's pool. They would also walk to school together every day. July 30th, 1985 was a particularly hot day in Toronto, so Nicole and another friend, Jen, decided to go swimming at the pool in the building, as they had done many times before. The plans had been arranged over the phone, and they had planned to meet each other in the lobby at 11 a.m. that morning. After Nicole finished eating, she said bye to her mom before leaving the apartment they shared. She was seen walking towards the elevator on her way to meet Jen in the lobby. About 15 minutes after Nicole left her apartment, Jen buzzed up to tell Jeanette, Nicole's mom, she hadn't shown up yet. Jeanette wasn't immediately concerned. She just thought that they had somehow missed each other and that Nicole was already at the pool or off playing with some other kids at the back of the building. At the time, Jeanette was running an in-home daycare, so she was unable to leave the apartment to go look for her daughter. After a few more hours had passed and Jeanette hadn't seen or heard from her daughter, she realized that something was terribly wrong and contacted the police. So I know back in the 80s, it was a very different time than it is today. Kids had a lot more freedom, and the potential dangers that could be lurking were not as obvious or thought of at that time. I remember going outside for hours to play and only coming in to eat, use the washroom, grab a drink or a popsicle, and go right back outside for hours and hours. There was no technology to be able to check on your kids, and parents just had to trust that their children were okay and would return home. Honestly, I don't know how parents did it back then. If my kids don't return my text or answer my phone call, I immediately start to worry. Once the police were called, they responded quickly. They started to search and canvass the apartment building to gather as much information on Nicole's last movements as possible. The police set up roadblocks around the building and drove around the neighborhood with a PA system to alert the residents to Nicole's disappearance and her description. As the police canvassed the building, they would knock on every door and enter apartments even if no one had answered. One woman who lived in the building was able to identify Nicole from a picture. Police were able to determine that she had entered the lobby. However, no evidence had been found to determine where she had gone from there. The first thought was that this was an abduction. The next day, the media started to gather and police intensified search efforts. Officers from across Metro were brought in to help, and they fanned out across Etobicoke, looking anywhere and everywhere they thought they might find something, anything. There were mounted horsemen, marine units, helicopters, and foot patrols. Tracking dogs were brought in to search the underground garages, utility rooms, storage units, and some pump rooms in the building. Toronto Star crime reporter Cal Miller, who retired in 2005, recalls going up to the Jeanette's apartment in the early morning and was surprised to find Jeanette and her estranged husband, Art, sitting inside. He talked with Nicole's parents for a long time, and they were understandably devastated. They were just going through the motions at the time. I've said it before, I don't know how any parent can deal with a situation like this. I'm sure I would have to be committed to a mental hospital because there's no way I could deal with the loss of any of my children, let alone having one disappear without a trace. I'd be wondering if they were alive, are they suffering, are they cold, hungry, are they calling for me, will I ever find them? Like, the torturing thoughts would be endless. Miller's goal was not only to cover the story, but to also help the Morin family. He wanted to make sure that his story made the community aware that Nicole was missing and to encourage people to do anything possible to find her. Miller was a founding member of the Toronto Crime Stoppers, and this was the first major case for the organization to get involved in. Crime Stoppers offered a $1,000 reward for Nicole's safe return. They also printed posters and produced a video reenactment. Jen would play the role of Nicole, and Miller's 8-year-old daughter played Jen in the original reenactment, which aired within weeks of Nicole's disappearance. A neighbor of Nicole's remembered seeing an unidentified blonde woman with a notebook on the same floor as Nicole's apartment about 45 minutes before her disappearance. The police tried to find her, as she was a potential witness, but the woman was never identified. On the day Nicole had vanished, contractors had been installing a surveillance system in the building. If these cameras had been installed the day before, perhaps police would have had more to go on. More than 900 residents in the neighborhood joined in the search for Nicole. The Toronto Star printed 6,000 copies of a poster showing Nicole's picture and the phone number of the Metro Toronto Police. 3,000 copies of a watercolor sketch of Nicole was also commissioned by the Toronto Police and distributed to police departments, post office, and local stores. In addition to these efforts, police offered a $100,000 reward for Nicole's safe return, which is still in effect to this day. This case became the largest police investigation at the time and involved the largest number of police officers. The police cleared all family members and acquaintances from any suspicion they may have been under. Police also looked at suspects in child unalivings, as there was an unusually high number of child unalivings in the Toronto area in the mid-1980s, as well as they looked at religious cults. Later in the investigation, they discovered that Nicole had written that she was going to disappear in her diary. They didn't know what that meant, as 8-year-olds typically write down all kinds of things. Maybe Nicole wrote that because she was angry at her parents at the time. I remember as a kid thinking all kinds of things like I'm just going to run away when I would get in trouble. So you really can't take something like that seriously when it comes from an 8-year-old child. We say the silliest things as kids, not fully understanding what the meanings are. As with many investigations, people would try to get involved in the case by claiming that they were responsible for the disappearance of Nicole. Nicole's father, Art Morin, allegedly hired a private investigator despite the police attempt to discourage it. In addition to hiring a PI, Art also quit his job and set up an office to search for clues for his missing daughter in Canada and in the US. He also moved back in with Jeanette after Nicole's disappearance, but ultimately they separated again in 1987. Even though this case is considered cold, police and missing child organizations continue to try to keep it in the public's eye. In 2001, Toronto Crime Stoppers released an age progression picture of Nicole as a woman in her mid-20s to more than 1,000 Crime Stopper programs in 17 countries through the internet. Child Fine Ontario keeps the case in the public eye by arranging to have pictures of Nicole, both as a child as well as age progression, and her physical description appear on electronic screens in Esso gas stations, billing envelopes from Rogers Cable, as well as CIBC and the TTC display screens, and the back of transport trucks. For the 30th anniversary of Nicole's disappearance in 2015, Toronto Police had organized a 5K run called Nicole's Run at Centennial Park in Etobicoke. This event also included a candlelight vigil. The run also collected $3,000 in donations for the Canadian Centre for Child Protection. In 2019, 34 years after her disappearance, the Toronto Police Missing Persons Unit released an age progression photo of Nicole to indicate what she might look like in her early 40s. Jeanette passed away in 2007 without having any answers as to what happened to her only child. Art, Nicole's dad, reportedly still lives in the Etobicoke area. So I really feel bad for Nicole's mom. She left this world having no answers, no closure, nothing. It's really sad that this case is still unresolved. This poor family has been suffering for way too long. To this day, there have been no confirmed suspects in this case. If anyone has any information on the disappearance of Nicole Morin, please contact the Homicide Unit at 416-808-6900. 7400. It's so hard to say what could have happened to Nicole. There could have been any strangers in the lobby, or if she went outside to, go find some other kids like her mom had originally thought. Who knows who could have been lurking outside the building? Maybe even one of the contractors that was in there installing the surveillance cameras, maybe one of them was involved. I don't know. I'm just speculating and just sort of brainstorming on what could have happened. Because it's just hard to imagine how any child can just vanish without a trace. What do you think of this case? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to follow, like, and share this episode. It helps more people discover these stories and keeps the conversation going. Thanks for listening to Crime Time 911. Stay safe, stay curious, and remember to always trust your gut.